Joe, was one of the funnier things because Ryan Grubb, their offensive coordinator, their new offensive coordinator, is heading or staying technically, I guess, in Seattle as he's going to be the next offensive coordinator of the Seattle Seahawks. It's funny because a lot of fans that are not Alabama fans are trying to they're excited because they feel like they're seeing a downfall at Alabama. And I do think it's funny that Ryan Grubb last week told the Tuscaloosa Boosters that he wasn't leaving. That he was going to be the next OC, and then he goes to Seattle. But did you see this article that came out before we start talking about Ryan Grubb and where Alabama could go with their next offensive coordinator? Did you see this article about Ryan Grubb potentially already telling the Seahawks that he was going to be their next OC, but wanted to help out Kalen Deboer because of the portal window at Alabama and didn't want players to hit the portal and like kind of really sleazy type of stuff? It seems like maybe what's going on with Ryan Grubb. Number one, do you buy into that? And I guess obviously the overarching question, what do you think about Ryan Grubb heading back to Seattle?
Yeah. I think what you're talking about here from like a coaching standpoint, he has to do this where he has this decision to take on the offensive coordinator job and he plans to leave for Seattle to help out a guy that he's got a really good relationship with, to not jump ship immediately, because all of these guys were already leaving when they brought in the new coaching staff. And I'm sure some were excited about the opportunity to play for Ryan Grubb, but that does not mean that this is not a sleazy decision and a sleazy move by Grubb to mislead these kids. I would hope that there was some direct communication and some honesty, but I would probably doubt that that didn't happen. I don't think that this negatively really hurts Alabama that much, because the brains behind the whole operation is Kalen Deboer. You don't hire Kalen Deboer because you want Ryan Grubb. You hire Kalen Deboer because you want him. You want the roster building, offensive prowess that he brings to the table. Ryan Grubb was just a nice piece to all this. And as you said in the open, there are options on the current coaching staff that could take over for this gig, that nothing, really is going to lose any steam. It's just like a really, really weird circumstance with everything.
So what do you think about the move, though, for Seattle with him going there?
I think it's great. I think that to grab an up-and-comer like Grubb, the way that he's been, as he has really rapidly rose in terms of the respect that he has gained throughout the industry, is amazing. My biggest thought on this, though, is I think that Seattle, I'm watching what they're doing with that second pick that they have, and if they trade back into the end of the first round, and if they don't try and go and get Michael Penix, I think that there is a really strong likelihood now, as a team that has been rumored to take a quarterback early, that the Seattle Seahawks do not get aggressive and try and go get Michael Penix.
At number 2?
No, not second overall. I'm saying their second round pick. They take him in the second round, or they trade back into the end of the first round and they take him.
I wouldn't hate that. And he could sit behind Geno Smith and learn. It would be, I wouldn't hate that. I think that Nick Sheridan is somebody that is a name to watch out for. He's been the tight ends coach at Washington. He played quarterback at Michigan. I know that a lot of people who know Nick Sheridan, our good buddy David Cohn, who knows him really well, is a guy that I would keep my eye on, but I don't think it's as a big of a move or a departure, because I do think Kalen Deboer, to your point, Joe, could settle in and he could be the play caller. Ryan Grubb, having good coaches on your staff is always a bad thing when they go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people are I say overreacting, but reacting this because it's Alabama and, this kind of stuff probably wouldn't happen under Nick, right? Like things like this would normally just be pretty even kill. But I got to admit, it's not as big of a departure from an offensive standpoint. I don't know, though, if you don't look around and bring in an OC who fits your type of personality and fits your type of system that doesn't have Southern ties. Because I do think you got to start bringing in some Southern coaches in here for recruiting purposes.
Well, he did that with the DC, which is big.
True. I'm talking about offensively, though. You're
Okay.
gonna have to start bringing. You're gonna have to bring in some guys here that have Southern ties now. You can't just keep bringing in West Coast guys, Northern guys to Alabama. It's not going to bode well for you. Joe, I'm telling you, I've lived in the South my whole life. It ain't going to work.
I think another name to pay attention to here that's on the current staff. I really actually don't think that they go outside the current staff. I'd actually be really shocked if
I
they
would be
did.
shocked too.
Jamarcus Shepard,
Yep.
who was the receivers coach that was brought over, that was the receivers coach with Washington, and that was the best unit on the field that I don't think enough people recognized and gave credit for what we saw with Roma Dunze, Jalen Polk, and Jalen McMillan, that all three of those guys are going to be top 100 picks in the upcoming draft. It is going to be amazing to see those guys play in the NFL because of the coaching that they received and the rapid development that they had under Shepard. He also was a co-OC for Purdue from 2018 to 2021. I believe that was under Brom when Brom was there at Purdue. So you're getting a guy who has been an offensive coordinator before.
Philosophy type fit too.
Right. I really think that Shepard makes a lot of sense. And then, blanking on who the guy you just said, though, that would make a lot of sense as well.
You're talking about Nick Sheridan.
Yes, Sheridan.
Scott Huff, their offensive line coach, could also be leaving Alabama to go to Seattle too. Joe, you know what the crazy thing in all of these coaching hires for me is, and even talking about this one with Alabama, I do think that there is one thing that goes untaught or does not get talked about enough. Joe, we're about a month away from a lot of these teams entering spring practices. And they do not have one central voice that they have listened, that they have heard since Nick left. I do think that there is and can be some worry of, hey man, we've had a lot of turnover, not only on the staff, but in that locker room. I do think Alabama right now, Joe, has more question marks around them than they've had in the last 2 decades. And clearly they do. But I do start questioning how Kalen Deboer is going to respond to all this. I don't think it's a big of an issue from a play calling standpoint. I do, however, believe it can be a big issue if you continue to have a rotating door, a rotating a coaching staff coming in and out of there when you don't have one central voice. Because if Scott Huff leaves, he's had a month to get to know these guys, okay? Restructure a lot of what's going on along that offensive line with guys like Proctor leaving.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's where I wouldn't worry for Alabama is play calling. Where I do worry is continuity. And I do think that that's one thing that we never discuss because, Joe, they're going to hit spring in about, a month, 30 days from now. Joe, they don't have a central voice, and that can be a massive problem.
I mean, that's the checks and balances of having a really good coaching staff and being a good coach and having all these guys that want to come be a part of it.
Not just late into the year, though.
It's something they can't really control, though. The timing of Saban leaving and him getting hired happens to correspond with right when everybody in the NFL was looking for their coordinators and all this stuff with all these guys moving around. I don't think he could really control it, but I understand what you're saying, that Nick Saban had a much more talented coaching staff, and those guys rarely left unless they got a home run job offer. And he was not able to keep his guys. DeBoer was not able to keep any of a lot of these guys. I hope this is not telling of the future, that there's going to be a lot of coaching and roster turnover every single year, because that is where Alabama ultimately is going to get killed.
I know one thing that is 100% true though. Everybody outside of Tuscaloosa is loving every single second of this downfall. And I
Well,
do think that Alabama fans really, Joe, I'm going to continue to say it. They better temper expectations. They better, because Joe, I think Kalen Deboer is a good coach. Don't get twisted what I'm trying to say. He has never been in a conference week in, week out where he's going to have to face this. It's going to be a massive learning curve for Alabama fans. Joe, they've never, ever in the last 20 years, only 1 year where they didn't have a regular season of double-digit wins. In the regular season, there's the very strong likelihood that does not happen this year.
they're gonna win only 9 games. I'm willing to commit to that. Maximum. The ceiling's 9. It's going to be hard to get over that.
It's going to be very hard to get over that. Very hard, because they got Georgia, brother. They got to go to Baton Rouge.
They got Texas
and Texas.
Do they?
Or did they go to Oklahoma? Because they had Texas in back-to-back years. That's the only reason why I'm asking. I think they got Oklahoma.
Yeah, they don't have Texas.
They got Oklahoma.
No, they don't have. They do at Oklahoma, which still
So they got
to play Mercer. They got to play Mercer. That's a tough one.
Oh God! So they got Georgia at Baton Rouge at Norman.
Yeah. Yep. And at Tennessee. Tennessee can be good this year. Wait, we saw if you're having a,
I think more than Nico, I think they might have like 6 kids suspended. I'm hearing some things.
I don't want to unpack that just yet, but if this is a down year, which the early start of the season for them is easy, except for potentially getting their
first at Auburn game.
Auburn is at home. But I'm saying middle of the year, October 19th, having to go to Tennessee while you're trying to get your feet underneath you, that's a trap. That's a trap game. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.